back. The gentlelady from Ohio, Ms. Brown, is now recognized via Zoom.
Thank you, Chairwoman Maloney, for holding this hearing. I would also like to thank the witnesses for coming, and in particular, the witnesses on the first panel whose stories were simply gut-wrenching. In 2020, guns were the leading cause of death in children. Out of the 45,000 firearm-related deaths in 2020, more than 4,300 of these were children. Many more have been injured or traumatized by gun violence. Sitting here, it is hard not to feel angry that we allow so many children to be killed by guns. Now, let me be abundantly clear. My job is not to take away guns. I myself am a licensed gun owner. My job is to keep our communities safe. Our national obsession with guns is killing thousands of kids each year. Every one of those kids deserve to grow up and live a full life. We cannot sit idly by and do nothing as guns are used to kill our children and fellow Americans. So my first question is for Mr. Romali. How does a red flag law work before you begin?
A red flag law is designed that if there is some sort of a threat that is alleged, a threat to harm yourself or others, that is brought forward to law enforcement or another profession can bring that to a court. That is the due process of a judicial process where a judge will examine the evidence that was brought forward, will look to see what the circumstances are, and a judge will make a determination whether or not a weapon or weapons are to be seized, and that's for a determinate amount of time to be reviewed after a set amount of time, where then that individual who had their weapons taken can come back in again and make a claim to get their weapons back.
Thank you so much. Mr. Saplina, why are we seeing an increase in child deaths due to guns?
Well, the short answer is that we're not doing anything. We are seeing an increase in child deaths because we don't have the laws in place that we've been discussing this morning and this afternoon. We have not enacted child access prevention laws at the federal level that could protect children both from unintentional access, or rather unauthorized access, and child suicide. The reasons go on, and children are dying in homicide in this country. They're dying by suicide. They're dying by unintentional deaths, and we have not addressed that. In the states that have, we see better outcomes, and I want to emphasize that because we gloss over it so much. In the states that are enacting these laws, even though their efficacy is lessened by the influx of firearms from other states, we are seeing lower mortality rates among children and the general population.
Thank you. Mr. Jackson, for you, we have heard your testimony today about kids who have been traumatized by the horrors carried out in Uvalde and communities that look like yours and mine. Can you share with us the impacts of gun violence on child survivors as well as their friends and family members?
Yeah, I mean, what we have to realize is that they have a lifetime of trauma that they have to live with. And we know that one of the biggest indicators of whether someone will become a future victim or even an offender of violence is have they been exposed to that trauma. And what's most terrifying for me is in both of these communities and communities all over the country, we're forgetting about victims and their trauma. We're not providing the services and support for them or their families. And there are people in Buffalo right now that have been abandoned by our government and just asked to deal with that trauma. So a huge thing that we can do now is fight for resources for community-led violence intervention and prevention strategies that includes therapeutic and trauma care for those who have been directly impacted.
Thank you so much. I think we've all heard far too many stories of gun violence. Again, I personally have been impacted by losing the lives of three young men who are part of my youth ministry that did not live to see the age of 21. This has to stop. Enough is enough. We have the tools to make a difference for families across this country. And if we can just come together and find the political will the compassion and the courage and the capacity to just do it. With that, I yield back.